Michael thought he was coming to Dr. Phil's show to fix his marriage. But when his wife opened her mouth, she didn't ask for forgiveness. She confessed to a lie that had lasted 25 years. The audience froze. Even Dr. Phill, a man who's heard everything, went completely silent. What she said next changed what her husband thought was his entire life. The lights were blinding, the air heavy with that kind of tension only a live studio can hold. Karen sat in the center chair, her fingers trembling as they clutched a tissue she hadn't used yet. Beside her, Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees, waiting for words he thought would explain a misunderstanding. Instead, they would end the life he thought he knew. Dr. Phil's voice was calm, steady, but beneath it was something else. Concern, maybe even fear of what was coming. "Karen," he said, "you reached out to us because you've been living with a secret. You said you can't carry it anymore." Karen nodded, eyes glassy. "I can't." She turned slowly to Michael. "There's something I need to tell you, and it's not about cheating. It's worse." The crowd rustled. Someone gasped. Michael frowned. "Worse." She inhaled, the sound shaky through her mic. "For 25 years, I've been lying to you. About our family. About Adam." Dr. Phill blinked. "Your son?" Karen's lips quivered. "Yes." The silence that followed didn't feel like television anymore. It felt sacred, like no one dared to breathe. Michael straightened, confusion flashing to anger. "What about Adam?" Karen's tears broke free. "You're not his biological father." The words landed like a gunshot. The audience gasped again. Even the camera operator flinched. Dr. Phill leaned back, stunned. For the first time in minutes, he couldn't speak. Michael's hands dropped to his lap. He blinked at her, as if waiting for her to laugh, to say it was a sick joke. But she didn't. She just cried harder. Finally, he whispered, "Why are you telling me this here, in front of everyone?" Karen's answer came like a confession from the edge of a cliff. "Because if I didn't say it now, I never would." Dr. Phill found his voice again, softer this time. "Karen, take us back. When did this start?" She shook her head. "Before our wedding. I made a mistake. One I buried so deep I convinced myself it wasn't real." Michael's face crumpled. "So Adam's father is who?" Karen looked at Dr. Phill, almost asking permission to keep going. He nodded gently. "If we're going to heal anything here, we have to tell the whole truth." Her next words made the room go cold. "His name is David. He was my ex, and he never knew." The studio went completely still, a silence so heavy it drowned out the cameras, the crew, everything. Michael whispered, "You let me raise another man's son?" Karen sobbed, "You raised our son. He may not share your DNA, but he has your heart." Dr. Phill leaned forward. "Michael, you just heard something that would crush most people. Tell me what's running through your mind right now." Michael's jaw tightened. "I don't even know who I am anymore." Dr. Phill nodded slowly, letting the words sit. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the truth doesn't just change a marriage, it changes identity." Karen reached for Michael's hand. He pulled away. And then Dr. Phill, voice barely above a whisper, asked the question that hung like a blade in the air. "You mean to tell me Michael isn't who he thinks he is?" Karen's eyes closed. She nodded. Cut to black. What would you do if the person you loved most rewrote your entire life with one sentence? 2 months before that studio confession, everything looked perfect. The morning sun spilled into a kitchen full of laughter. Karen stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while Michael teased her about burning them, like he had every Sunday for 25 years. Their wedding photo hung just above the table. Frozen smiles, perfect posture, a picture of forever. To anyone watching, theirs was a marriage people envied. 2 grown kids, a cozy home, a love story built on stability and years of shared memories. But sometimes, the perfect life doesn't crack with noise. It crumbles in silence. Karen felt it every night, lying beside the man she loved, the man she'd lied to. She'd stare at the ceiling and think about that one choice, that single night decades ago, that followed her like a shadow she couldn't shake. At their anniversary party, everyone toasted to 25 years of love and loyalty. Karen smiled through the speeches, clinking glasses, laughing for the photos, But when she looked at Michael, her chest tightened. Every toast felt like a countdown. He squeezed her hand, leaned in, and whispered, "I'd marry you all over again." Her throat closed. "You would?" He grinned. In a heartbeat. And that's when she felt it. Guilt like a knife disguised as love. Because she knew if he ever learned the truth, it would destroy that heartbeat. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the candles had burned out, Karen sat alone at the dining table. She stared at the empty plates and thought about the first year of their marriage. The year she took a secret paternity test without telling anyone. She'd hidden the envelope in a locked drawer ever since. The drawer became a ritual. Every year on their anniversary, she'd open it, read the letter inside, then tuck it away again. That night, she did it again. She unlocked the drawer and unfolded the yellowing paper. Her eyes fell on the name printed beside Father, not Michael. Her breath hitched. She'd memorized it years ago, but seeing it still hurt like it was new. She whispered to herself, "You don't have to tell him. It's been too long. It would ruin everything." But her reflection in the window stared back like a ghost, reminding her that silence was its own kind of betrayal. The next morning, she woke up to find Michael already in the kitchen, humming as he made coffee. He looked up and smiled. "You were tossing all night." "Just a dream," she lied. He kissed her forehead. "We're lucky, you know that. 25 years and still solid." She forced a smile. "Yeah, lucky." Later, as she drove to work, a billboard caught her eye, an ad for Dr. Phil's show. The tagline read, "Some truths can't stay buried forever." Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. A thought began to form, one she tried to push away, but didn't leave. It grew. That night, she sat at her computer and typed the word she'd been too afraid to say out loud. "Dear Dr. Phill, I've been lying to my husband for 25 years. I need help to tell him the truth." Her finger hovered over the send button. For a full minute, she hesitated. The screen glowed, waiting. Then, with trembling hands, she clicked send. A single tear fell onto the keyboard. The next morning, she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it, until her phone buzzed. The message was short. "Hi, Karen. This is the Dr. Phill show. Can we talk?" Her heart stopped. She looked at the old envelope again, the one that had haunted her life, and whispered, "It's time." But she had no idea how much that truth was about to cost her. Because once you bring a secret into the light, it can never go back into the dark. Would you still tell the truth if it meant destroying the only happiness you ever built? The letter had been waiting for 25 years. Karen found herself standing in front of the old mahogany dresser again, the one that had followed them from their first apartment to this house, from newlyweds to parents to empty nesters. She pulled the top drawer open, slow and hesitant, like she was opening a coffin. Inside, under a pile of forgotten receipts and a single baby photo of Adam, was the envelope. It was yellowed at the edges, the handwriting faint, her handwriting. For Michael, when it's time. Her breath caught. The words looked smaller now, but the weight behind them hadn't aged a day. Karen's hands trembled as she lifted it out. For a moment, she thought about tearing it apart, burning it, pretending none of it ever existed. But lies don't die when you bury them. They wait. She sat on the bed, the letter on her lap, staring at it like it might speak first. Flashback, a younger Karen, 25 years ago, in a clinic waiting room, clutching a baby blanket. The doctor's voice echoes. The results are definitive. The biological father isn't your husband. She remembers the sound she made, half sob, half silence. She remembers staring at the floor tiles until they blurred. She remembers swearing she would never tell anyone. Back in the present, the memory still feels too sharp to touch. She unfolds the envelope, not to read it, but to look at the proof she's kept hidden. A birth certificate, an old paternity form, a single photo of a man she hasn't seen in 3 decades. David, the man who doesn't know he has a son. The man she told herself she didn't love. The man who now haunts every thought she has. Karen whispers, "You don't deserve to know him, but he deserves the truth." A phone buzzes on the nightstand. She jumps. It's an email from the Dr. Phill show, a producer named Rachel. "Hi, Karen. We read your story. Dr. Phill would like to help. Can we schedule a call tomorrow?" Karen's heart drops. Tomorrow. Suddenly, the letter in her hand feels like it's burning. That night, she can't sleep. She sits by the window, moonlight spilling across the floor, the unopened envelope beside her. She practices what she'll say, whispering to the dark. Michael, before we were married, she can't finish. Her throat locks up. Morning comes, and so does the call. Karen, Rachel says, Dr. Phill wants to help you tell the truth in a safe, supportive environment. This story can change lives. Change lives. The phrase echoes in her mind. She thinks about the thousands of people who watch that show. The thought of saying this in front of them makes her stomach twist. But another thought hits harder. If Adam takes that DNA test, the truth will come out anyway. She thinks about her son, his easy smile, his laugh, the way he calls Michael dad without hesitation. And then she thinks about what it will do to him when that truth lands. Maybe she thinks it's better if it comes from me. She agrees to go on the show. The following week, a thick envelope arrives in the mail. A consent form, travel itinerary, and one line in bold letters. Your episode will be filmed live. Karen stares at the words. Live. No editing. No escape. That night, she sits with the envelope again, reading the paternity results one more time. The paper is worn, the ink smudged from tears long dried. She whispers to herself, You've kept this secret longer than you've kept any promise. Her reflection in the mirror looks older, smaller, hollowed out by truth. Then something shifts. Not relief, not courage, but surrender. She slides the letter back into its envelope, presses it to her chest, and closes her eyes. The next morning, she mails a copy to the Dr. Phill producers and another to herself. A single line written in pen across the top reads, This is the truth. It's time. As the postal clerk stamps it, she feels a tear slide down her cheek. What she doesn't know is that Adam has already taken the same DNA test, and his results? They're sitting in his inbox, unopened. Sometimes, the truth isn't waiting to be found. It's waiting for two people to collide with it at the same time. The day had finally come. Karen sat in the green room, her hands gripping a paper cup she hadn't sipped from. The faint hum of cameras filled the hallway, muffled through the door. Makeup artists moved quietly around her, dabbing her cheeks, fixing what couldn't really be fixed. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman in the glass didn't look like her anymore. She looked older, smaller. Like someone bracing for a storm, she'd summoned herself. The producer, Rachel, peeked in. We're ready for you. Karen nodded, stood, and followed her out. Just a few feet away, the studio lights blazed like judgment. The audience murmured softly, unaware that in a few minutes, they'd hear something no one in that room was prepared for. On stage, Dr. Phill greeted her with that calm, steady tone, a voice that felt both safe and dangerous. Karen, take a deep breath, he said. You've been holding this in for a long time. She nodded. Too long. The applause faded, replaced by silence. Dr. Phill turned toward the backstage curtain. Let's bring out your husband, Michael. Michael walked out slowly. He looked confused, tense, like a man who'd agreed to appear for marriage counseling, not revelation. He sat beside her, his jaw clenched, his eyes searching hers. Karen, Dr. Phill said, You wrote to us saying you've been keeping a secret for 25 years. You said you're ready to tell the truth, no matter the cost. What is it you want to say to your husband? The audience leaned forward. Karen's throat tightened. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. She began, her voice barely audible. I've lied to you, Michael. Not once. Not for a year. For 25 years. Michael blinked, eyebrows furrowing. About what? Karen's lips trembled. About Adam. Dr. Phil's tone dropped lower. Your son. Karen nodded, tears welling. He's not your biological child. Gasps rippled through the audience, sharp, unfiltered. Michael froze. What did you just say? I was scared, she sobbed. I made a mistake before our wedding. I found out after we were married. I didn't want to lose you. Dr. Phil's eyes softened. And you carried that all this time? Karen nodded, her voice cracking. Every birthday, every Father's Day, I looked at you and wanted to tell you. But then I'd see how much you loved him. And I couldn't. Michael's face went pale. You let me raise him thinking he was mine? Karen broke down. Because in every way that mattered, he is yours. The silence was so deep it hummed. Dr. Phill leaned in, his voice almost a whisper. Karen, why tell him now? Her hands trembled. Because Adam took a DNA test. He's going to find out. I couldn't let him discover it before you did. Michael exhaled sharply, disbelief turning into something colder. So this wasn't about honesty. This was about damage control. She shook her head, sobbing. No, I couldn't carry it anymore. I had to face it. Dr. Phill gave a slow nod. Secrets are like mold. They grow in the dark. But sunlight doesn't just reveal, it disinfects. The audience was dead silent. You could hear someone sniffle in the back row. Michael finally spoke. Who's his father? Karen hesitated. His name's David. From before you and I met. Michael stared at her. Does he know? She shook her head. No, I never told him. I didn't tell anyone. Dr. Phill leaned forward, measured. Karen, you said this truth has been eating at you. What are you hoping will come from sharing it today? She looked at Michael. Maybe not forgiveness. Maybe just relief. I want you to finally know who I really am. Dr. Phill nodded. That's a brave thing to say. But I need to ask you, have you thought about what this will do to Adam? Karen's breath caught. Every day. And then, just as Dr. Phill was about to speak again, the studio door creaked open. Everyone turned. A young man in his 20s stepped onto the stage, tall, nervous, his hands gripping a folded piece of paper. Dr. Phil's eyes widened. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam is here. Karen gasped. No, he wasn't supposed to. Dr. Phill held up a hand. He reached out to us this morning. Said he had something to say too. Michael's head dropped into his hands. Karen froze, tears streaming down her face. Adam walked closer, voice trembling. Mom, I already know. The audience erupted. Gasps, murmurs, a few whispered, oh my God. Dr. Phill leaned back, stunned. You know? Adam nodded. I took the same DNA test. Weeks ago. Karen's lip quivered. Then why didn't you say anything? He looked at her with heartbreak, not anger. Because I wanted to see if you ever would. The words hit like a punch no one saw coming. Dr. Phill stayed silent. He knew better than to interrupt moments like this. Michael looked up at his son, or the boy he'd thought was his son, and whispered, You knew. Adam nodded slowly. Yeah, and it didn't change how I feel about you. You're my dad, but it changed how I see her. Karen buried her face in her hands. And then Dr. Phill, quietly, asked the question no one wanted to answer. Can this family survive the truth? Or did the lie already do too much damage? Fade to black. Would you still tell the truth if you knew it would break the people you love the most? The studio lights felt colder now. Dr. Phill didn't say a word. He just watched, the way he always did when emotion filled the room louder than applause ever could. Adam stood between his parents, holding the folded DNA results. His voice was steady, but the kind of steady that only comes from holding in pain too long. Mom, he said quietly, when I sent that test in, I thought it would be fun. I just wanted to see what part of the world our family came from. But when I saw the name listed as my father, and it wasn't Dad, I didn't believe it. Karen's eyes filled. Adam, I never wanted you to, he cut her off, shaking his head. No, don't say you didn't want me to find out. You knew this day would come. Michael stared straight ahead, jaw tight, saying nothing. Adam continued. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized it wasn't. And I didn't hate you. I just couldn't understand how someone could lie for my entire life and still call it love. The room went still again. That same eerie quiet that happens when everyone knows they're watching something real. Karen whispered, I did it to protect you. Adam let out a short, pained laugh. Protect me from what? The truth? Or yourself? Dr. Phill leaned forward, voice calm but firm. Adam, what do you want from your mother right now? Adam's hands trembled. I just wanted her to look me in the eye and admit it. Without the cameras, without the show, without the world watching. Karen's breath caught. I couldn't. I didn't know how. Adam's tone softened. You always taught me to tell the truth, Mom. To own my mistakes. But you couldn't do the same. Michael finally lifted his head. Son, he said slowly, this isn't about her anymore. This is about us. Adam turned to him. You knew. Michael hesitated. Not exactly. But I suspected. When you were a baby, I took a test before your mom even knew. I got the results. I saw the truth. The audience gasped again, a low, stunned hum. Karen's face went white. You knew all along? Michael nodded. I did. Tears welled in his eyes, but his voice stayed firm. I knew you'd made a mistake. But I also knew that boy in my arms was mine, maybe not by blood, but by heart. And I made a choice to never let him feel like anything less. Adam froze. You knew for 25 years, and you never said anything? Michael swallowed hard. Because it didn't matter. You were my son. You were my son. The crowd exhaled, an audible release of tension. Dr. Phill leaned back, eyes glistening just slightly. That's what love looks like. Sometimes truth doesn't have to destroy, it can define. But Adam wasn't done. Then why didn't either of you tell me? You say love doesn't need blood, but if that's true, why hide it? Why make me feel like part of my life was a lie? Michael's shoulders dropped. Because I didn't want you to look at me differently. Adam's voice broke. I never would have. He turned to Karen again, his anger replaced by exhaustion. You always said family means trust. You said we could get through anything together. But you never trusted me enough to tell me who I really am. Karen reached out, her voice shaking. I was scared, baby. I thought if I said it out loud, I'd lose you both. Adam stepped back. You already did. The words hit harder than any shout ever could. Dr. Phill took a breath, his tone measured and low. Karen, fear makes people lie. But the truth? The truth makes people free. Even if it hurts first. Karen nodded through tears. I see that now. Michael placed a hand on Adam's shoulder. Son, maybe we can start over. Not as father and child because of DNA, but because we choose to be. Adam looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he walked out. His eyes softened. He nodded slowly. You're still my dad. Michael smiled weakly. That's all I ever wanted to hear. Karen turned toward them, whispering, Can you ever forgive me? Adam hesitated, eyes full of both anger and love. I don't know yet, but I'll try. Dr. Phill leaned in gently. That's where healing starts, not in forgetting, but in trying. For the first time in years, the three of them sat in silence together, not hiding, not pretending, just breathing in a truth too heavy for words. The audience was completely still. Even Dr. Phill didn't speak for several seconds. He just let the weight of it hang there, the sound of forgiveness beginning, one heartbeat at a time, fade out on the stage lights dimming. Sometimes, the truth doesn't destroy love. It tests it and shows whether it was ever real to begin with. The studio had never been so quiet. The lights dimmed, leaving only a soft glow over the three of them, Karen, Michael, and Adam, sitting in silence that felt almost holy. Dr. Phill leaned forward, elbows on his knees, speaking gently. Most people believe lies destroy families, he said, but sometimes they reveal what kind of love a family is really built on. Michael stared at his hands, the gold wedding ring glinting under the light. 25 years ago, that ring had symbolized a promise. Today, it symbolized a choice, to keep loving someone who broke it. He turned toward Karen, his voice steady but raw. You've hurt me in a way I can't describe. You made me question everything, the years, the laughter, the life we built. But the truth is, I wouldn't trade a single day of it. Karen's tears fell freely. How can you say that after what I did? Michael gave a small, tired smile. Because the lie didn't make me love you. I did. The truth just reminded me why that love matters. Dr. Phill nodded slowly. That's what real forgiveness looks like. It doesn't excuse the lie, it outlives it. Karen turned to Adam, her hands trembling. You didn't deserve any of this. I wanted to protect you, not confuse you. Adam looked at her for a long moment, his expression softening just enough. Mom, I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, but I can understand you. And maybe that's the first step. Karen reached for his hand, and this time he didn't pull away. The audience exhaled together, some wiping their eyes. Dr. Phill glanced at Michael. You said earlier that you suspected the truth years ago. Why didn't you say something then? Michael's gaze drifted toward the crowd. Because I wanted to prove something to myself. That I could be the kind of father I never had. That love doesn't have to be earned through DNA. It's built through time. Through choice. Adam's voice cracked as he whispered, "You were the dad I needed, not the one a test could define." Dr. Phill smiled softly. "That right there is the truth that matters." Karen took a deep breath, her face pale but peaceful. "I spent half my life afraid of this moment. But standing here, I realize it's not the truth that breaks us. It's the fear of facing it." She turned to the audience, her words quiet but steady. "If you're carrying something heavy, a secret, a lie, tell the truth before it tells itself. Because silence isn't safety. It's slow death." The crowd clapped. Not loud, not celebratory, but warm. Compassionate. Dr. Phill looked at the family one last time. "Today, we learned something powerful. DNA might show where you come from, but it doesn't define where you belong. Love does." The lights dimmed even further. The cameras pulled back, a wide shot of the three of them sitting together, not perfect, not fixed, but real. Michael reached for Karen's hand. She hesitated, then took it. Adam looked down at the DNA results in his lap, and for the first time, folded them in half and placed them beside him. "I think I'm done looking for proof," he said quietly. "I already have it." Dr. Phill nodded with that signature half-smile. "That's how healing begins, not with answers, but with honesty." As the credits' music swelled softly, Karen leaned into Michael and whispered, "How can you still love me after all this?" He squeezed her hand, eyes glistening. "Because you finally stopped lying to me. And now, I can love you honestly." Dr. Phill looked straight into the camera, his tone warm but reflective. "Sometimes the hardest truth isn't about what we find. It's about who we become after it's revealed. If this story teaches us anything, it's that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It redeems it." The lights faded out completely. Sometimes, the lie we regret becomes the proof of the love we were too scared to lose. The stage is empty now. The lights dim. Only the faint echo of applause remains. But stories like this don't really end when the cameras stop. They live on, in the people who go home still wondering about their own secrets, their own truths left unspoken. If this story moved you, maybe it's because you've carried a truth too heavy to hold alone. Maybe there's something you've been afraid to say to a parent, a partner, or yourself. Remember this: silence keeps you trapped, but truth lets you breathe again. It might break things first, but it rebuilds them honestly. So, if you've been hiding behind fear, take the first step. Reach out. Speak. Heal. Because sometimes the only way to protect the people we love is to finally stop protecting the lie. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, honesty doesn't end a family story. It begins a new one.